Hey folks, David Stewart here. So I've been getting a lot of requests for me to do an analysis of the latest Game of Thrones season. And while I would love to jump on the hype train surrounding all the fan disappointment and fan upset with what they did with the final season and scoop up some views and get some attention for myself, it's not going to happen. And the reason is because I don't watch Game of Thrones. And in fact, I don't watch any TV. And that includes streaming service TV. I haven't had cable hooked up in my house in years at this point. So why don't I watch TV? I thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to talk about why I generally don't like the TV format and why it's not interesting to me, especially considering other alternatives. The first thing is that I actually find the TV format to be more boring in general than almost any alternative use of my time. As I get older, this is basically me. I become less and less interested in passive content. That is, movies that have a particular pace, TV shows that have a particular pace, things in which the consumption rate of what I'm doing is not up to me. So that's passive entertainment. I become less and less interested in passive entertainment and become more and more interested in entertainment where I have some amount of control over it. So either a game, which is constantly engaging to me, or a book, which I can read at a varying pace depending on my interest level in particular moments. I can speed up or slow down or put the book down and pick up a different book if I'm bored with it. I have a lot more control with other kinds of media. So compared to that, the TV format is boring. And then compared to movies, it's boring. Because while you have a limited amount of time with a movie to tell a story, and that's restrictive, and you don't have those restrictions in TV, meaning you can have a longer story, you can have story arcs that last for a long time. While you don't have those formats, the problem with TV is that because it's so open, a lot of times TV shows just don't really have anything going on. In fact, my wife and I, a couple of years ago, we watched the first, I think, 2, maybe 3 episodes of Game of Thrones because there was so much hype surrounding it. There must be something to it if everyone likes it. But we just didn't find it interesting enough to continue. And my wife is much more interested in passive content than I was. So I found the show too boring to watch, really from the get-go, and I just didn't continue with it, especially because I knew some of the story elements from, I guess, what would be the first season. So I didn't end up continuing with it. At this point, for me to watch enough Game of Thrones to do any kind of content to try to get people's attention, it just wouldn't be worth my time. In fact, the amount of hours that exist in Game of Thrones, I could probably just read all of the books, and I would probably prefer to do that versus watching a passive content where I don't have control over what's being presented to me. And that's to say nothing about the production. The production values are high. It's nice to look at, all that kind of stuff. But in general, passive media has become less interesting to me as I've gotten older and smarter and sharper and all those kinds of things. I just tolerate it less. The other thing about TV, and this is kind of, it includes reality TV too, but the appeal of the soap opera has really taken hegemonic control over the way that TV content exists now. Every show has actually become a soap opera with a different setting, and I don't enjoy soap operas or novellas. For you people that are from the Spanish world, the Latin world, what a novella or a soap opera is, each day you have a different story and usually something shocking to get you to watch the next episode. Something unexpected will happen that you don't want to miss when you watch the show. And all the shows have kind of become that. They've become this drama-centered thing where it's more about how you micro the shocks in the moment versus any kind of story arc. So people talk about story arcs. I really don't see very many story arcs outside of like Japanese anime shows because they're based on mangas which actually have story arcs. And Game of Thrones might have a story arc because it's based on books, but for the most part, other shows don't. And so what ends up happening is, while a show may have a really interesting premise to begin and may have a really good first season, like say The Walking Dead or something like that, which I watched a couple episodes of that, as time goes on, it inevitably will decay in its quality because of what's demanded of it. It's not the demand of the story, it's the demand of the market, which is why you end up in a soap opera. What you need to do from the corporate perspective is you got to have people tuning in to watch every single week, which means something important and shocking has to happen every single week. And also, because the show is profitable, once it becomes profitable, you can't resolve the story. because if you resolve the story, the show ends and you're not making any more money. So inevitably, you end up pushing the story out as long as it can become profitable. And once you see kind of the end in sight, that's when you start to tie things off, which is why so many shows end up with unsatisfying conclusions. A really good example that's now at this point a couple years old is the end of How I Met Your Mother, which is a sitcom. Now, sitcoms to me are actually less boring than dramas. And the reason is because they're full of jokes. And so even though there's very little happening with plot, the plot might be very simple, there might be no character progression, there's jokes. So the jokes themselves can be a little bit more interesting than the plot. So How I Met Your Mother was a sitcom, but it ended in a way that upset a lot of fans, which is that you had these two characters which had developed they got married over the course of the final few seasons. In the last episode, they just get divorced, and the main guy ends up with this girl that you kind of thought they were going to get together within the early seasons. Now, it turns out that was exactly the ending that the showrunners had originally planned, the creators of the show had planned. But because the show was so popular, the network wanted them to continue it for several more seasons, which means they had to conjure up from the abyss a bunch of storylines and a bunch of character relationships that they hadn't originally thought of. And then you also have this feedback where you're trying to, fans really like a particular relationship between two characters, so you can't break them up. And then you get to the end of the series, and even though you end it in the way that you planned it and you kind of set that up from the beginning, it's very unsatisfying because people have gotten attached to a different set of stories that you created in order to extend the show and create more drama. The Walking Dead's probably a great example. As time goes on, people just continue to talk about how bad the show is, and I'm glad I don't really watch it. I watched the first few episodes. They were okay as far as zombie drama goes, but I could see the soap opera format coming a mile away by like the second or third episode, because the first episode ends with the shock, oh, my wife is with like my friend, which is what I think it was. It's been a few years. So I kind of saw that coming a mile away. So what ends up happening is the TV format really is pretty predictable while it's boring. And so that is a bad combination for me. There's not a whole lot that happens. You have some kind of 2-bit tension that happens, and then it ends with something that creates a bunch of tension to make you come back for the next episode, or you have a really big event where you need to watch the fallout by watching the next episode the next week. And so this is how they keep people kind of tied and running along and continuing to watch Game of Thrones all the way into whatever season. It's like the 8th season, 8 seasons of a really high budget show. It's cool on one level that they were able to do that. But they got people doing it because they formatted each episode in such a way that there's never really a resolution of the tension. There's never really a resolution of plot. And it seems like with this 8th season, there's still not really a resolution of anything, at least not a satisfying one. Things ended the way that the fans didn't really want them to end, or in ways that the fans were not convinced it was set up for them to end. And that's because of that soap opera format. It's really hard to manage that and create a satisfying ending. So as far as TV, the TV that I actually like tends to be older things that don't engage in that. So something like Star Trek, The Next Generation. By the time you get to Deep Space Nine, you have some continuity, but each episode is its own story. It's penned by its own writer. It has its own beginning, middle, has its own resolution, its own character arcs, character growth, moments for the characters that are there, important subjects and topics. And there's so many good episodes of Deep Space Nine. There's so many good episodes of The Next Generation. There's great episodes of Voyager as well, and even Enterprise. So that episodic format just... you could miss a week and you could still come back and watch the show. Now, back during the broadcast TV days, if you had a weekly show like Star Trek, you didn't want to too heavily soap opera-ize it because someone might miss an episode. And if you had a 2-parter, you might show the first part of that before the second part, just in case somebody happened to miss Star Trek the next week. Once you got TiVo and you got streaming, that became less of an issue. But you still notice that they time releases. It's pretty rare that you have something like Netflix where they're like, here's a whole season. Instead, networks are savvy to this. They want to time releases so that the tension between releases remains high. People have to watch that next episode. It builds that hype train. Really, it'd probably be better if Netflix went to a more broadcast style to keep the hype on their shows kind of constant. going on. But I don't really like that soap opera format. So what you have now with most shows that are fiction, that is, you have a soap opera. But people who don't normally watch soap operas are watching them. So you use the psychological devices of the soap opera and you just put it in a fantasy world. You put it in zombies. You put it in space. You do whatever you're going to do with it. And I just don't really enjoy that. It's not very fun for me. It becomes annoying after a while because I'm aware of what they're doing. I would rather read a book at my own pace and reach a satisfying conclusion rather than have to sit and wait and watch a show passively. I guess I could watch it like 1.5 speed, but that's weird where they're talking fast. So that's where I end up with TV. It ends up becoming a boring experience. Now, with reality TV, which I can't really stand for the most part, I watched reality TV like 20 years ago because I literally had nothing better to do with my time, I guess. But reality TV uses the same thing. It uses a high drama soap opera format to keep people watching. You keep people interested in whatever real person and whatever real drama, and you edit it so that the drama lines up like a soap opera as well. So nowadays, everything's a soap opera. And movies are really the relief of that. So while people talk about movies are unoriginal or they all use the same format, and there's a truth to that with certain blockbuster kind of movies, even though you have a more limited format called a 2-hour to 3-hour format, or really 90 minutes if you want to, the 90-minute format is really kind of king. You have the potential for things to actually resolve and for you to be satisfied putting away whatever it is you watched and not feel bad about it. How many series have you watched all the way to the end of whenever they chose to end it and been super happy about the way that they ended it? It's pretty rare, I think, that happens. I think the last TV show that I watched in entirety was Scrubs, whenever that ended. And at that point, I had watched it on DVD, I think. I didn't even have cable at that point, or broadcast, or an antenna to bother watching it. So anyway, leave your thoughts down below. What do you guys think about the TV format, and do you enjoy watching TV shows these days? People always ask me, what do you think about Stranger Things? I'm like, I don't watch it. I'm not interested in watching it. It's not for me. So what do you think about the format? What do you think its benefits are? Do you mind the soap opera nature of the modern TV format, or is that something that actually appeals to you and you enjoy the effects that it has on you? So let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.